96 wins. Robby Foley, Patrick Gallagher, they find the victory in GTD. It has been a wild one.
That is huge for Robby Foley. Patrick Gallagher is a 70-point swing.
Robby Foley and Patrick Gallagher are victorious here at Road America.
Well, hello again, everyone. I'm Matt Yocum. Welcome to the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. And when you get a chance to walk through the paddock at any IMSA WeatherTech event and you stop by Turner Motorsports, it doesn't take long to see that it's a special culture for sure, but it is certainly one big family. We've got a couple of the family members here in studio this week, Robby Foley and Patrick Gallagher. And as I told your owner, Will Turner, I said, I got the twins on today. And he busted up laughing. He goes, oh, those two, they're special ones.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Fun to be here.
So when you look at being a part of the Will Turner culture, and then on top of that, you look at the Taco Mafia. I don't know if that's what they're called, but we've got to come up with a name for them, but it seems like a good one. But it is really unique, the fan base and how they pull for you guys in the blue and the yellow.
Yeah, certainly. Robby's been here a bit longer than me, but just joining Turner Motorsports 3 years ago, you learn very quickly how passionate the fans are. And I think Will's been around forever with the same blue and yellow schemes and then the red, white, and blue liquid moly cars. And so they're easy to identify with, and people have seen them for 20, 25 years now. So it was cool for me to come in and figure that out. But it didn't take very long.
And you've been there since, what, 2018?
Yeah, 2018 was my first few races there. So yeah, Will's done a great job building an amazing culture. One that's super serious, trying to win races, championships, all that through the years, but also one that has a lot of fun. I think as a group, we definitely take it seriously, but one of the teams that have probably the most fun in the paddock, which is always a good time. Yeah, Taco Mafia, as we just named them. A great bunch of fans that's growing all the time. We got some taco merch at the track, so we're seeing a lot of these new taco hats, and yeah, that's always great.
Especially during the grid walk, you see everyone walking around with their taco hats, and they always love to come by because it's a great opportunity. It's free. It's part of the general admission ticket, the autograph session, as well as the grid walk, and you see everyone wear their colors, and they always have to stop by your pit box to get some pictures. But your folks do a lot of camping at the races, and they probably get a chance to see firsthand what goes on, when the action ends on the racetrack and the fun begins in the infield.
Yeah, certainly. I've met a lot of the people, the Taco Mafia, as we're calling them. I like that. I've met a lot of the people through my parents camping, and they just randomly park next to people, and they have Turner stuff. And my dad's not so shy, so he'll go talk to him, and Robby's dad's right with him. And so we met a lot of them that way. And then you go to different tracks and see the same people year over year. You see a lot of familiar faces, and they're always in the blue and yellow Turner Motorsports shirts. And yeah, you can see them coming with the taco hats, especially now that they're selling them at the racetrack. There's been a big uptick.
And I tell people when they say, hey, they ask you different questions about different folks that they'll see on television on pit lane, and they'll ask about Will, and I'll say, he's like the fun uncle. He could be serious, he's got a job and his business, but he's also kind of like the fun uncle. Is that how you guys would characterize he and then his sidekick, the magician, Don Salem?
Yeah, I think so. Will is still doing this because he loves it. It's his passion. It always has been. I think Turner Motorsport was originally started in like 1998, so and he still loves it, hasn't gotten over it. And he and Don used to race together. Now they're kind of, obviously Will running the team, owning the team. Don's our strategist in all series. So there's actually a core group of a handful of people that have been there for 20 years. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, those two, the banter they have, like our intercom in the pit lane sometimes strays away from maybe what it should, what's going on in the race, to making jokes and having a good time. So yeah, I'm glad that's not recorded, because I think we'd be in a lot of trouble. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Is it funny, though, when you think back to when they started, and Will told me, oh, yeah, back in the early days, Don would actually be driving and calculating the strategy for all the different cars on the team.
Yeah, if you do get a chance to hear those intercom conversations, he's still doing
Yeah,
he's doing both cars, at least in the GS side of things. He's doing both cars, and he'll be talking to me and Jay or Robby and Jay. And honestly, it's incredible that he can keep it all straight in the math. And he's asking fuel numbers from 2 different people and figuring it out and do this with the 96 and this with the 95. So it doesn't shock me. It was probably easier for him to do it in the car, when it was just him and Will.
When you look at that, and you guys, and we've talked before, just how it's a little bit unique where if one of you is behind the wheel, the other one is sort of like the conduit from Don passing on information to your teammate behind the wheel. But because you're a driver, does that help? You also think big picture and make you a better driver because now, you've got all this information in your brain that you're passing on to your teammate, but you're also learning a lot going on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. This year we're in the 96 GS car. Basically, Patrick and Matt Dalton are splitting the season with Vin Barletto and I. The majority of the season has been Patrick and Matt and Vin. They've done the 4-hour races. Vin and I have done a few sprint races, and then Patrick and Matt have done the rest. So when Matt and Patrick are driving, I'm running the car on the radio. Don's kind of in the middle on the pit box, and then Jay, our engineer's on the left side. But Don and I are kind of communicating back and forth on the strategy side of things. I'm giving him numbers to do math, fuel numbers, and as you say, mad scientist. He still is old school. He's got a pad and paper. He works at that a lot. He's got spreadsheets and stuff as well, but yeah, he's making calls on the fly, and he definitely has a special brain and ability to take in so much information. Every now and then he'll like blurt something on the radio when you're in the car when he means to tell somebody else, but the amount of stuff that he can manage at one time is pretty impressive. And for us, it's been fun because driving the car, obviously you get an idea of the strategy, but now you see kind of the behind the scenes of how to make decisions and why the decisions are happening. So it's been a fun process.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Robby and I have a couple, like it's unique all around. I don't think there's any other team that probably does it like that. But Robby and I have been friends for so long. We drive together. So we know what each other's thinking before he even says it. Or, you can read probably, some people on the team he'll know what I'm saying in a different tone or whatever. He'll be clued in and already know the information I want next or vice versa. So it's quite interesting, an interesting dynamic because a lot of the times when I'm there, they'll be like, oh, Robby said this on the radio, and I'll be like, he means this, and they know it, and it's just totally unique, I think, to any other team I've been a part of.
And when you look at how other teams do it, usually they're on the box, they're plugged in, so they're hearing the team intercom and the radio traffic. But in this type of a format, does it make you that much more aware of what else is going on in the race? So, somebody, goes into the tires, and you're automatically going, hey, so-and-so's in the tires in turn 7. And Don may not know that yet, but because you're so aware of the surroundings and the situation, that your brain is thinking in some ways like him. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, for sure. You're just clued in sooner. And the fact that we go right from GTD to GS with all the same people, everybody's on the same page already. There's no switching over and I run with this team or this engineer on this program or this strategist on that. It's always Don and Jay and Robby and me and Will. That certainly makes it easier. And we just have everybody's clued in on kind of what their job is. And so if Robby's in the car, I'm watching the monitors, Don's doing strategy, Jay's talking about adjustments to make, and vice versa. So yeah, there's a lot of that happens, and he knows when I say something on the radio to him, what it means, or if there's any extra context that you just get more information out of less words because of everybody working together so often.
Does it help the situation that you've got the owner and the strategist, both former drivers, so they have a little bit different perspective than maybe someone who's just an owner and they love racing, they're a great businessman. But when you look at what Will has done, starting out, basically as a customer racing program.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing is they can read the situation in the race without us having to tell them. Like if the car's good or bad or we're fast or slow, they can adapt on the fly without having to get too much information to us, in strategy options, undercuts, overcuts, should we try to hit a fuel or now energy target, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot that happens that goes unsaid because it can be unsaid. So it makes everything happen seamless. And like Patrick said, the the two series, we operate with kind of the same people. So the cadence of everything, the terminology is the same. So that's been really good. One thing that I've now been doing and gotten clued into is how to keep the crew, the pit crew, informed. So if we see an incident on track, the first thing I'm doing is telling the crew to stand up because we might dive in or something like that. So all these extra elements, almost, like we're sitting here as a production, you now as a driver get the full picture of what's going on, which is super cool.
When you look at your operation and the two of you guys have a great friendship away from the track. So do you guys ride to the track together in the rental car? Do you spend a lot of time together? Who chooses the music in the car?
Yeah, I guess normally we do.
Yeah.
We'll share a room often if it works out, or dinners and yeah, music. We generally like the same stuff. I don't have a huge preference. I like kind of all music.
That works good for me.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a good friendship. I mean, that's gone back. Talking about our parents, camping and stuff. We actually met originally when we were both running MX5 Cup. I was in a Skip Barber series. He was in the main series. And our parents met. They're both we both had a similar background. Our dads are club racers in SCCA and stuff. So our parents became friends. We became friends. And now they're pretty removed from our racing, but they still come to support. And they often camp together and stuff like that. So it's been a fun process to kind of see it come full circle to race in the big show together now.
I don't think any series discipline has more of a ladder system. So no matter where you are skill set wise or budget wise, there is a place for you somewhere. And if you look at the MX5 Cup program, it seems like there's so many young folks like yourselves that have come out of there and have really, fine-tune their skill set, climb the ladder. You're seeing them in Michelin Pilot, you're seeing them in WeatherTech. What is it about that series that is a good stepping stone to launch you into the next level?
Yeah, I think just to start, back when Robby and I were running it, John Doonan, now president of IMSA, was president of Mazda Motorsports, and really they gave opportunities to guys like us that probably wouldn't have a chance to make it without them. So when you have a prize like that can further your career, a lot of really good people are going to show up, whether it's crew guys or team owners, drivers, all trying to go up the ladder. And so I think that having all of that, you end up with the best people and you're racing against really good people. I mean, it's kind of wild to think we're in WeatherTech now and it's Kenton, Robby, me. You could just keep going. Over the years of people that have made it out of that series, I think that just the close racing, those cars are always nose to tail, and you kind of have to think and be able to go fast. Just driving around quickly is not enough to win those races, especially back then. It was a lot easier to pass with the drafting with the older car. Now I think they're a little bit more in line, but it's the same thing. You're 2 inches away from all the cars all the time. It teaches you how to race. And you can't win without being fast. So it just makes you think about everything.
And when you look at the different tracks they go to, but what was the biggest thing that you felt like it improved in your racecraft when you ran the MX5 Cup cars?
I think just the sheer amount of cars that are competitive and how close you can race together. The cars we're racing now, it's tough to get close with aero wash and different things like that. But as you see in the MX5 races, they're inches apart and touching each other all the time. So you get very comfortable at a young age, at least in our case, is racing close. And like Patrick said, one thing that I didn't understand as well as I do now is when I was racing, the drafting game and the strategy behind it. Like I would be the guy to lead 42 minutes and then get passed on the last lap because I didn't draft well. And, there were single car teams. I was on kind of a single car team against 4-car teams. And you go to Road America and you could be leading coming out of the last corner and be 6th by the time you got to turn 1. So, it just teaches you how to race and think. The driving of the car, well, it's a race car, and anybody that can drive a race car fast, I think, can drive most race cars fast. It doesn't relate so much to the car we're driving now. It teaches you how to think and have like an extra mental capacity or a sixth sense for reading situations. And somebody dive bombs down the inside 3 cars ahead of you, you know how that's going to play out. And I think you see people that come out of that series race really well and smart and all that.
Yeah, I think something that's probably I just was thinking about here that wouldn't make a lot of sense without describing it well, so I'll give it my best shot. Um, the races when we were doing them were only 45 minutes. I think they're still kind of in that same general window. But because you could pass so easily, you could go at Road America, you could go from first to sixth to fifth to second to first on one lap. And it happened every lap for 45 minutes. And I think it teaches you when to attack and understanding where you need to position yourself for later in the race, because where you're at 20 minutes in, if it's sixth or second, you could be in first or 10th by the next straightaway. And so in endurance racing, you have to know, is this worth it to do right now? And I think I probably learned a lot of those lessons. You know, I'm naturally a pretty aggressive guy. And I think that taught me, oh, you don't need to lead every lap. When is it important to make a push to try and get to the front or pass a car? Nowadays, push someone on fuel or energy and try and save a little more and get them in the pits. Just understanding the strategy of when to go.
So you talked about your families and how your dad's similar backgrounds with the club racing. So you were from Ohio.
Yep.
Kind of give us a little bit of insight into what it was like for Patrick Gallagher growing up, because you guys were farmers.
Yeah.
We talked in the past about how my family had a farming background. Your family has a farming background, which teaches you a lot, especially about the summertime when you're baling hay or you name it. Nothing says July baling hay and sweat and hard work like farming does. So what was it like in Ohio for you growing up?
Yeah, it was interesting. I grew up in a small town, Thornville, Ohio, which is in Perry County. Robbie's been there a couple times. It's good fun. I grew up right down the street from Mike Shank. He's about 10 minutes away. So anyway, growing up, my dad raced club racing. My mom went into labor with me at Mid-Ohio, essentially. Came home, had me, went to the racetrack, 2 weeks later for the first time, and haven't stopped since. So I grew up going to SCCA races my whole life, wanting to go racing. When I turned 6, they got me a quarter midget. My first race was inside the swine building at the Ohio State Fairgrounds. Yeah. And my dad, naturally, this will make sense, we didn't go testing, as you might imagine. Robbie knows him. We showed up, and I think in the driveway, he just taught me how to use the gas and the brake, which I kind of had some four-wheelers and stuff, but never once drove the thing, and just entered me in my first race. And then away we went. I got dead last. Shocking, I know. I've never driven it before. And then they raced every week, I think. I don't really remember. Maybe it was every 2 weeks. And, once I figured it out, I won the second week. So started racing quarter midgets and then into go-karts on road courses in Circleville, Ohio, where a couple people that have come out of there over the years. And then when I turned 16, I went straight to SCCA and going the open wheel route, and kind of originally got involved in the Mazda ladder deal out of SCCA. Went in the runoffs in 2012, qualified me for the shootout. I ended up being fortunate enough to win the shootout and get the scholarship, and that put me in MX5 Cup, which, is why I'm sitting here talking to you today.
Now, your mom didn't go into labor when you were at a racetrack, did she?
Not quite. A little different. So my dad was in the SCCA, same as his dad. He was doing autocrossing, which, for those that don't know, is they set up a course in a parking lot with cones, and you basically, is a time trial, and you try to be the fastest through the cones. So he did that. I would be in my high chair in the garage when he was working on his car. And eventually I got to do it myself. When I was 8, I got a go-kart, and I could go. The program kind of ended, which is sad, but I could go to these autocross events in my go-kart and run against kids in a time trial. And we did that kind of all over the country. Eventually did the SCCA national championships and stuff like that. Once I got to 12 years old, I was about as tall as I am now, and I outgrew my go-kart, and I was a little too big for it. When I started breaking axles and rear wheel studs and stuff, my dad was like, maybe it's time to give this a rest. But I went and played football and baseball pretty seriously. Hurt my leg really badly playing football. Didn't walk for a year and a half. And at that point, I'd always had a crazy passion for racing. I watched the Rolex 24, probably 22 out of 24 hours, only because I took a 2-hour nap in the middle of it. I was obsessed. So I tried to kind of pursue it. My route originally was through Skip Barber. So we got to the same point winning a Mazda scholarship slightly different ways. I went through Skip Barber, and they had these regional series that were very inexpensive. And if you won them, they would pay for your next level. So I went through their ladder system initially before I got into the Mazda ladder. And I won the scholarship by winning the highest Skip Barber level. So he did the shootout through winning the runoffs. I did Skip Barber and got that scholarship to ultimately end up kind of at the same point. But without that grassroots, very, very grassroots introduction, I think it obviously would have been tough. And just to echo what Patrick said, our initial racing was, very luckily funded by, in my case, Skip Barber and Mazda, et cetera. Between us, there's probably hundreds of thousands of scholarship dollars that went towards our racing that ultimately allowed us to be here today.
Well, you look at it today, it's like, we mentioned on the cars, you got Liquid Molly, you've got, Bellhaven and Investments. There's so many people that love the culture of auto racing, and they want to be a part, whether just to sponsor a car or to help drivers along through the different levels. And that's another aspect that is just so cool about this discipline and this family.
Yeah, no doubt. I've been supported first off by my parents. They mortgaged their house a couple of times, which maybe wasn't the best decision, but I'm glad they did. I think Fulbert's probably in a similar position.
Yeah, I crashed. I had a crash at Watkins Glen once that caused a little remortgage of the house.
Yeah,
never lived that one down.
But yeah, first by my parents, and I think Robbie's the same way. They still come to the racetrack and support us, and definitely hit the parent lottery, and then just tons of people along the way, whether it was in SCCA or Mazda and the scholarship. We both worked at Monticello Motor Club. I met Matt Dalton there, and I've been racing with him for 5 or 6 years now, and him and Chris are great. They've supported me. I've just had tons of people that supported me my whole career, whether it's family, friends, co-drivers, people you meet along the way, and just super fortunate to be sitting here and driving this car. But with the humble beginnings of, I remember my dad racing SCCA. He would buy 2 sets of tires a year. He got one for the whole season, and then he really went out and got, he went for it and got it one set for the runoff, or maybe 2 in the later years. So I think he increased the budget and he was getting 3 sets a year. But I think coming from that, and then you pair that with kind of how Will started in a similar fashion, building his own cars and alongside the business and going racing, that kind of, although we ended up together, everybody understands each other. And it makes it for a really cool environment that we all kind of started, scrambling to make it happen. And all along the way, the pieces kind of came together.
Now, you mentioned the Monticello Motor Club, and that's something that's really taken off. And it seems like every IMSA race that we have, you're hearing, crowds up by double digits, and you can see it in the camping and the parking, and especially in the grid walk. But that's another, avenue for fans to go down, as you're seeing all these motor clubs popping up. And I've never been to Monticello, but I've seen pictures and video, and absolutely stunning place.
Yeah, absolutely. We worked there together. I think Patrick was integral in helping me get a job there. But we used to spend the summers there when we were both in college, coaching and instructing. And yeah, it's basically these tracks are like country clubs for motorsport. So individuals with cars, kind of the way that it works is they come there, they catch the bug, and then suddenly 2 years later they have race cars, and it's allowed enthusiasts to connect with racing really well. I think it's a model that's become really popular in the U.S. You don't see it too much outside of the U.S., but there's probably, I would say, 10 tracks throughout the country now that have kind of adopted that model, and we've been lucky to go to a lot of them and help kind of coach their members and drivers. But it's certainly a cool opportunity.
Yeah, we had no fun there at all.
Sleeping on air mattresses in a basement of a house on a lake.
Yeah, we lived on air mattresses for 6 months. They'd deflate every night.
Yeah, we never.
But those are the memories that you put down. You're like, oh my God, back to those were fantastic memories.
I describe it as the best time I never want to have again.
Yep.
That's a good way to talk. Yeah, no doubt.
You mentioned the Mazda MX5 Cup, and what a small world it is, and autocrossing. So a couple of my high school buddies, they were the Fliss family, which now, takes care of that whole program. and their dad, Stan, put on a couple autocross events in Daytona. Ironically enough, one of which was in the parking lot of the Volusia County Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, whoa, are you sure we're going to be good on this? But I quickly learned after 2 autocross weekends how much tires really cost, because I had a Mustang, and those Goodyears, holy smokes, I think they were like 275, 15, 60s, and you go on to the back of Car and Driver or Road and Track, and you're trying to find the same tires at the least price you can to replace. Like, all right, maybe that's it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the BMW probably would have been easier on the tires.
No, for sure.
I agree. I agree.
And just retrospectively, if you get back into it.
So when you look at just your backgrounds, and you mentioned college, Ohio State and Auburn, and of course my Florida State Seminoles beat his team for the national championship. But that was before.
That's true. Before I was there.
That's right. I know. The
Ohio State University.
But see, my family was Michigan State. They were Sparties. So that's why I kind of throw shade at you by not mentioning the in front of Ohio
What
State.
is that? An enemy of your enemy is your friend?
Yep.
I won't say the name.
Yep. So how tough is it at that time period trying to get your racing rolling, but also, working on your college degrees, all the classes, trying to work classes around, your racing schedule?
Yeah, I was in school for 6 years. I went part-time a couple times just to try and make it happen. My parents were very adamant that I go and get a degree because they probably, rightfully thought that making it in racing was a stretch, So I'm glad I did it. I met some of my best friends there. But it was difficult at the time for sure, managing college. I remember when I started at Ohio State in 2012, I think I had the runoffs. It was the runoffs. And it just so happened to be the first week of college. So I missed the first week and showed up. I didn't know how to log into my account. I hadn't done any work to try and figure this out, by the way. So it's, 7 days after school has started. I still don't know how to log into my account. I have no idea where the buildings are. I'm going in. Ohio State's a big place. And all on the welcome week, they have these little things set up where, the freshmen can say, hey, do you know where this hall is or this building? Well, turns out the second week they don't have that. So it was a bit of a struggle. So not only did I miss the first week, I was late to every class on the day I finally made it. So yeah, it was fun, but glad I went. And it's funny, now I have a lot of the guys that I went to school with and became friends with come to all the races and whatnot. But it was difficult in the time of going through it and trying to study and just barely getting by and focusing on racing and trying to raise the money. And yeah, it was a struggle.
I mean, did the professors cut you any slack, or they didn't really understand races? They're like, hey, I don't know what your excuse is, but it's not good enough.
Yeah, in my case, definitely not. Similar to Patrick, it was probably one of the best times of my life because it taught me how to be like an adult. I had way too much to juggle. I was often missing school, driving to races. I put over 100,000 miles on my car in like 3 years because I would drive to tracks a lot of the time because it was difficult to rent cars as a young kid, and the flight options would be after class. So oftentimes I would drive through the night to go to the race after class and stuff like that. And for me, I have a story I always tell. I had a thermodynamics professor in mechanical engineering. I had to move the first test, and he had this policy where you can only move one test a semester. So I moved the first one. Took it a week early or a week late, or I forget exactly. Got an A, which in thermo is a stretch. Like, I don't know how I managed that. The second test I could make, all fine. The professor got sick and moved the test a week later, which I think was a race at VIR.
Oh.
And I said, well, I got another race. I have to miss it. And he said, well, you can only move one test a week. And I was,
it's because of you.
Exactly.
I'm having to move it.
Yeah,
so then
the one you moved.
He said, well, your two options are drop the class or take a 0 on the test. And there's only 3 tests. So I dropped the class, and that definitely put me behind. And it was tough, but I would say it's, it needed to happen in my life to make all this happen. I learned a lot about myself and just managing all that. At that time, I was doing a lot of coaching as well. And I can remember specifically Vin Barletto, who I coach now and still drive with today. during that time period, I knew him from some work I did over the summers in the Northeast, him being from Boston. But I was coaching at Road Atlanta. He happened to be there running, I think his first time to Road Atlanta, like the fourth time he'd been on a racetrack. And I was coaching somebody else, and I ended up helping him out. And that's how he and I met. And Vin's been a great mentor in my life, beyond racing and in general. But we met down there. I was coaching him. And then just to tie the Turner situation into it, he called me one day and said, "Hey, I'm looking to buy a race car. Would you come and drive it and make sure it's okay? Like, I want to know what I'm buying." "Sure, no problem. What is it?" "Well, it's a Z4 GT3 car." And my eyes lit up, A, because that's probably one of the coolest race cars of all time. And B, I'm thinking, I don't know if Vin's really ready for that. But if you know Vin, you would know that he would just dive right into it. So I said, "Okay, well, who owns it?" And he goes, "Oh, Turner Motorsport." And I said, "Vin, I don't need to drive that. They just won the championship in it a few years ago. I'm sure the car is fine." And he's like, "No, you'll come and drive it. We're going to go to Watkins Glen." I think this was the end of 2017 in September. And that was my introduction to Turner. I really had, out of MX5 Cup, I had an opportunity to race with a team in LMP3 and stuff like that from my Mazda connections. But that was really the catalyst to bring me to where I am now, meeting Vin and Will, and that relationship has been great. But I wouldn't have been at Road Atlanta probably if it wasn't a two-hour drive from Auburn. So I made a lot of connections down there that really helped my career, helped me get some sponsorship from some local Alabama people to like fundraise to do this race at Barber at Motorsports Park, for example. So while the school part of it was super tough, especially trying to do mechanical engineering, definitely it's a part of my story that brought me to where I am today. So super grateful for that experience.
Well, there's so many moments that take place that if they don't happen, you don't make a connection or you move to the next place that is destined for you. And I heard a story when you first met Vin, you looked over and you're like, what is this guy doing? Because he's such an awesome guy and he knows with his confidence, he can do anything.
Yeah.
But when you looked over across the paddock, what did you see when Vin was working on his car?
Yeah, we had a mutual friend that said, "Hey, would you mind helping Vin on the next day of his track day?" I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And I remember showing up in the morning, and Vin comes out of the trailer and he's got his shorts on and his polo shirt and a helmet, and I'm like, "Where's the rest?" He said, "This is it." So his first track day, he didn't have any safety gear, and I said, "All right, well, we'll get through today. I don't recommend this at all, but on Monday we're going to talk about some safety gear." So I gave him a list of stuff to buy. After that first day, he said, "Hey, I'm going to VIR in 2 weeks. Would you come?" "Yep." So we show up to VIR, and he's got all his gear laid out. And I said, "How much did you pay for those gloves?" And he's like, "Well, they were like $30. And I said, "Yeah, because they're not fireproof." So we had the gloves, the suit, the shoes, and everything, but they were karting gear instead of the racing gear. So, yeah, that was Vin's intro to cars and racing. And it's what's really impressive about him is his lack of experience up to that point. And then shortly after that, having done a couple races and things like that, he jumped into IMSA and GT4 and GS with us. And he did really pretty well for a guy that had very little experience. And, to see it come full circle to win a championship with him in 2023, and he's still involved in the team. He and I will be racing together next week in GS, and he's racing VP Challenge. So, yeah, that whole story, you could write a book about it. But yeah, the first couple of days were cool and funny. And on the third event, we had all the right gear. We had an onboard camera, and we were going over video and data. And by the end of that season, he was going around pretty good.
When you're looking into that realm of being a coach for somebody, how does it improve you as a driver, but also being able to pass your knowledge on? How patient do you have to be? Because you know the level that you're at. And so many things are just institutionalized where you don't even think about it. But now you're having to think about it as you're trying to help someone, tutor them through the different stages of their learning process.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's super important. You do take things for granted, and luckily, I think working, coaching as many people as we do, you learn how certain people learn. As you coach someone on the first day, and you're not going to give them as much as you can on the 10th day when you know what they need or what helps them more, how they learn. But yeah, you start it, quite literally, you start at day one, trying to be like, okay, let's let's start by wearing a fire suit, right? Or it could be anything. And you just learn, like, Matt Dalton is who I've been with coaching the longest, and I know exactly what he needs before he even asks for it. Or maybe he doesn't even know he needs it yet. And once you learn somebody and you kind of develop a relationship, it's just like anything. You just get better at helping them. And then you have other people that you work with, and something that works for Matt may not work for Vin, but might work for the next guy. And you learn how to really think about even not driver coaching, but how your engineer thinks and how Don thinks and what does he need. And you just learn how people learn, and it helps you navigate making everything better and trying to push the ball forward.
And you look at your time with Vin, he's a student, he's a co-driver, he's a big brother. So there's a lot of different parts of your relationship with him that's really taken place over a short period of time.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, coached him in driving. He coached me a little bit in life. He has such a wealth of knowledge about everything over his life that I can really, as I'm trying to buy my first property, he gives me great advice, just for example. So yeah, I think it's a good relationship because it's not just coach student, it's kind of two buddies going racing together. And he's helped me through a lot of things in life, and I've been lucky to help him with racing, but beyond that, we've just had a great relationship. And without him and Will believing in me, I wouldn't be where I am now with BMW as a factory driver. I wouldn't kind of be in this position. So they've definitely, initially, I'm sure they took a massive leap of faith on a young kid, and to have their trust has been great.
What was it like to get the call that now Robby Foley is climbing the ladder and now he's going to be a factory BMW driver?
Yeah, it was cool. It was a little nerve-wracking and weird at the same time. So that 2018 season, like we talked about, I had got the opportunity to do a few races because Will had a interesting season where he had drivers committed to the endurance races, but he had a sponsor that he was committed to for the whole year. So he had to run the car, but couldn't kind of make ends meet. So that's where I came in just at the time where Bill was transitioning out of the factory program. So I got paired together with Bill, and we kind of built that relationship, and he and I drove together for, I guess, the better part of almost 5 years. Won a lot of races together, was lucky to be part of his record-breaking victory at VIR. So yeah, I mean, coming back to it all, like it started out as me just being the silver driver for Turner Motorsport. I got a few opportunities with BMW because of some schedule conflicts. Like I got to do a lot of testing in the GTLM M8, which was great, and kind of get a taste of what the factory stuff looked like. And then up until that point, kind of after that, I was the silver. I was gaining experience, and the transition really happened when I got upgraded to gold. I kind of was hoping that my position was still solidified in the team, and then BMW, at that time, kind of upgraded my status within them to a factory driver. So without the relationship with Will, I guess my road to being a factory driver was a little bit different. I came through kind of the customer racing. I had raced the GT4s, the GT3s. I'd been lucky to do some factory level stuff on the side to help out BMW. And yeah, to see it all come full circle, something I always dreamed about. And yeah, now being with BMW for a few years, it's an awesome place to race. We have great cars. We're always competitive. And yeah, it's been the time of my life for sure.
Now, you were part of the record that Bill made by becoming the winningest IMSA WeatherTech driver. So you were there that day. And what was it like for you when you won your very first IMSA WeatherTech race last year with he behind the wheel with you?
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, if you would have told us that whole story 10 years before, we wouldn't have believed you. I think, winning the first WeatherTech race at Road America, it's a great place to do it. But quite honestly, I think we had come so close a couple of times before, and we got knocked out of the way at Laguna Seca with a half a lap to go by a car that really wasn't fighting for anything. And so I think we knew we could do it, and it was just like, man, is this ever going to happen? Because we had a couple slip through the cracks. And when it finally did, it was kind of a relief, honestly, we knew we could do it the whole time, but to get one was good. And yeah, looking forward to the next one.
Well, you mentioned the relief, but also is there a memory, like a snapshot in time, that when you think of your first win, that's the first image that pops into your head?
Honestly, I would say there's a cool picture of all of the whole team, from top to bottom, everybody that was there in victory lane with the trophy and the checkered flag. And I think, that would probably be the snapshot that would pop into my head. But when I think about the thing as a whole, it's like I go back to, all the wild stuff that happened to get to that point, and how many things could have went a little bit different in a small way and would have changed the whole trajectory of everything. So it was just cool for everything to kind of come together, and hopefully the first of many.
Now, he's a little bit older than you. You've got a little bit more experience. Going back to your first one, you got 8. What was your first win like? When you look at how you kept, never giving up, kept on digging, driving overnight from school to go to different racetracks to keep that dream alive, but to reach the culmination of that first WeatherTech win. What is most meaningful to you about that day, looking back at it
Yeah,
today?
similar to Patrick. I mean, it's a relief in one way. I can remember that 2018 season. We had a lot of promise. I felt a lot of pressure as a young driver. I put a lot of pressure on myself. I guess I would say, driving with a legend like Bill Auberlen. I can remember I used to go to Lime Rock to watch the American Le Mans Series race back in the day, and Bill was a superstar and always was. And suddenly I get a call that I'm going to drive with him, and you're like, wow, there's big shoes to fill to be his teammate. So there was that. In that 18 season, we had a lot of good runs, a lot of good speed, but we never put a race together. We had some different things happen, but that 2019 season was also a lot of promise that hadn't lived up to much to that point. I remember the Rolex 24, we were leading, and we hit some debris and broke a damper, for example, which kind of took us out of the race. We still finished 6th, but we were, fighting our way back up through the field. Similar at Sebring, had a great race going. And just up to that point, there'd been so much promise, but no result. And we had a podium or 2 here and there, but we were leading so many races to not have it come together. And I can remember that week really well. It was July of 2019. My grandma had just passed away. So I had to kind of make the decision, or my family made the decision for me to go racing, and we could figure everything out later. But that was my first pole that stuck, because I had gotten pole before, but we got bounced in tech for a small little thing because I bumped the wall, actually. And at a street course in qualifying, I bumped the wall and kind of knocked the camber over the camber limit. So that's kind of my fault. But yeah, the pole position stuck for the first time. And then we led that whole race kind of in dominant fashion and won at Mosport, one of my favorite tracks. So at that point, it was like, okay, exhale, now just get on with it, get on with the job. And then over the course of that year, we had a great run for the championship, I think against Pfaff in a Porsche. Bill and I were racing against them very closely. We ended up winning the final race, Petit Le Mans, as well, which is my favorite race in the whole world. It's an awesome event. And just the first one is like a relief, but then 3 days later, you're worried about the next one. So, yeah, through the course of my wins, I think you're always fighting for the next one. And, yeah, to get one with Patrick last year was great. I think we've probably had 8 podiums together, I think, in GTD, and way too many second places. Like, they're all second places. I think we have 1 or 2 thirds and the rest second. So when you come up, short by this much, especially earlier in last year with the whole incident at Laguna Seca, taking that one away after we dominated that, we were starting to think, okay, is it ever going to come, and then we got it done at Road America. But we had the chance to win probably 3 or 4 races last year. So, it's always great to be running up front, but to get the first one was great.
So you guys are pals, same general age group, so you're peers, but you're racing with Bill Auberlen, a different generation. Was it more pressure or less pressure? Because he could take, some of the eyes off of you and let you grow as a driver, or because you're paired up with him, all the eyes are on you, so you've got that much more pressure on your shoulders?
Yeah, it's both, I think. Well said. I think, I could lean on Bill's experience to teach me some stuff, or at a minimum, I could just watch how he operated at a high level, and how he raced and how he understood the car. The M6 GT3 car was a little bit different than the GTLM car, but kind of the same bare bones, so he knew the car really well. for me, it was very different. First time I had driven like a twin turbo V8, and we had systems like anti-lag, ALS, and all this kind of stuff that he brought me up to speed with very quickly. And when you go into a situation like that, driving with a guy like Bill, who you've been watching since you were a kid, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. And Bill's a super nice guy. He was a great teammate, and he made my life very easy and was very friendly. You never know what you're getting yourself into. You think of him as a legend, but he was great and always gracious to kind of share stuff with me that he didn't have to, and he chose to do that, which I'm very grateful for. And yeah, we had a great run.
So for both of you, we'll start with Patrick. So growing up and as you're chasing the dream of racing, who was the role model for you? Who did you say, that's who I like, how he carries himself, I like how he drives, or how he, works on his racecraft? Was there somebody that you're like, that's the guy? Because quite often, you'll say, oh, so-and-so growing up, that was their idol. And they would have t-shirts still that they never got rid of because of that person's merch or whatever. And they always dreamt of being like them. So for you, was there anybody?
Yeah, certainly. I think in multiple series, right? Like, Scott Dixon, watching IndyCar. As far as sports car racing goes, probably in the beginning, it was the Scott Pruitts. Once I figured out that Mike Shank Racing was down the road, I started rooting for those guys, and then I ended up working there a little bit in high school, and got to know Mike, and I see how he carries himself, and how everybody in the paddock likes him, and he's just a good guy. So I would say from a team owner side, maybe looking at a guy like Mike, and then honestly, I always liked Bill and the Turner stuff, which was kind of wild. I remember a guy from my hometown, Eric Creech, went to work there, and I was still go-karting. I was go-karting with him, so I kind of had an interest in whatever he was up to, and we'd go to watch the IMSA races once or twice a year with my dad when I was growing up, and we'd stop by and see him and see how he was doing, and he's working on these race cars. And fast forward 10 years and now I'm driving them. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I would say it's all across racing, I had people that I admired, but I didn't have one person that I was like, this is the guy. I just admired anyone who could win and do it in a way that you could respect.
Robby, was there one guy for you, or was it just you took a little bit from different people?
I would say it's similar to Patrick. I kind of respected greatness or looked for that, even throughout all sports, because I was into baseball and football as well. In racing, I can remember growing up in New Jersey, the closest track to me in North Jersey was Lime Rock Park. So we went to all the pro races there. The biggest one was the American Le Mans Series. So a guy like Bill, I knew and respected really well. He won a lot back in those days. That was like the E92 BMW era, which was a super cool car, really cool sound. I had kind of an affinity for all the GT stuff. I don't know why. I think because there was more of the cars. At that time in LMP1 and LMP2, there was a handful. You had the Audis of LMP1, Porsche Penske was in LMP2, and they were fighting each other, which was cool. But I liked the GT racing. There was more cars, factory teams. So just picked parts of each driver that I liked. Some were really aggressive. Some were smarter. And that balance kind of teaches you to think about your own driving style and how you make decisions. You'd then look at F1, which is a little bit unrelated to our stuff, but respecting the greats in that, and NASCAR and all that kind of stuff. I was just obsessed with racing. I'd watch all of it. Even WRC was on Sunday nights on Speed Vision back in the day. Me and my dad used to watch that. I would get yelled at because it ended at like 11 p.m. and I had to go to school the next day. But just obsessed with all of it.
And you mentioned Shank, and I tell people all the time, like, hey, what's he like? Or I said, what you see on television, the great guy that he is, what you see if you're at the racetrack, the great guy that he is, and that's how he is, whether the cameras are rolling or not. What was it like pushing broom at Mike Shank Racing?
I remember my first day I spent cleaning Kiwi tile at his old shop in Pataskala. It's about 30 minutes from my house, so I drive up there and, 16 or 17, I don't remember how old I was, and I cleaned the blue Kiwi towel. I won't forget it. And everybody on the team was like, oh, that's kind of a no fun deal. But for me, it was working at a race team was a lot better than baling hay. So I actually didn't mind it. I didn't think it was that bad at all. But I do remember it. cleaning the trailers. That was like the whole first week, and then I got promoted to. It took me a minute to get promoted to broom. Yeah, but it was super cool, and all the guys there, I still see him around the paddock today and say hi. And obviously, back then he was just a 2-car team with customers, and now he's a full-blown factory effort. And he's got 2 Indy cars. He's won the Indy 500. I think I don't know the numbers when I worked there, but it was much smaller. And it was just cool to be involved, and for him to, I'm sure he gets a million kids that want to work on a race team. So for him to do that for me, I remember working there, and his wife Mary Beth came by one day and said, "Hey, what are you doing at the end of January?" I wasn't naive enough. I was hoping I knew what was coming next, and they asked me to go to Daytona, and I went down there, and that was the year that he ended up winning it for the first time, and I was the guy who ran the fuel, so I didn't go over the wall, but I thought that was a good job because you got to drive the tugger. But as what I quickly realized was it was the job that after the pit stop, you had to go to the gas station, and everyone else was like taking a nap, having a snack in the middle of the night. And that's when I figured out how cold it gets at Daytona at 3 a.m. But
So level 2 at Mike Shank Racing was pushing the broom.
for me, yeah.
What did you learn most with your time with him? Because you can always, when you're around people who are successful, there's always stuff that rubs off that you get wow, I didn't really realize that type of moment.
Just that he's a normal guy and treats everybody well. From the kid pushing the broom all the way to the drivers. Being around during that whole experience, they had Justin Wilson, Oz Negri, just, tons of great drivers. And AJ Allmendinger was there.
He was still short.
Yeah. You said it, not me. But no, it was just cool to see how everybody operated from Mike. I mean, like you said, what you see is what you get. And I learned a lot from that experience about how to operate within a race team and within the paddock, and how to carry yourself, and just, everybody respects what he's done. And he has a similar story to me, to be honest. And I was like, it kind of gave me that, well, if he could do it, maybe I can too. So it certainly kept the dream alive.
I think in some ways it's a misperception when you go through the IMSA paddock, and there are so many, as Philip Eng said on a previous show, he goes, we were just a normal family. And, we didn't have a suitcase full of cash to be able to help buy rides or whatever. When you go through the IMSA paddock, I mean, the majority of the people are all there. They came from very humble beginnings, and they just had a love and a passion. And so it's neat to see people who chased a dream and then see them realize that dream. Do you guys feel the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to get to that level, you have to be obsessed. And if it comes easy, it's I think you're less likely to put work into it. And I think I don't consider myself like the most naturally talented driver or whatever, but I've worked really hard and am analytical, and I've chased this dream as hard as I could, sometimes beyond even what I thought I could do. Like you said, driving through the night, I can remember showing up to the racetrack, working at Skip Arbor School, like bleary-eyed, hadn't slept at all, which, I'm glad I did it now, but back then I thought, wow, this is a pretty stupid idea. But if you want something bad enough, you'll chase it. And for me, that was a big way to come back from my injury. I gained like 100 pounds, not moving for 2 years, basically. So that was part of my process of getting healthy again, working out. I can remember my dad told me there can be short, fat race car drivers and tall, skinny ones, and you're tall, so figure it out. And I thought, okay, well, that's good advice. But just that obsession, I think, if your background doesn't allow you to get where you want, you got to figure it out. And that's, in our case, what's helped us, I think.
Now, for the fans at home, talk about that challenge. Talk about the crash and what you experienced physical-wise.
Yeah, so I was playing football, defensive end at the time. I ran across the field to go, to the play was on the other side of the field. I wasn't even really involved. And the whistle blew. I got hit after the whistle. So I was running. Imagine my left leg was in the air. I got hit from the right shoulder. Kind of my body lurched to the left side, and my foot landed really weird in the ground. And it was muddy, rainy day in North Jersey. And kind of my whole body weight was moving this way as my foot dug in, and my ankle snapped. That took the first brunt of it. Then it all went to my knee, and my knee kind of snapped inwards to where like my heel was sitting on the inside of my thigh, like, bending the wrong way, which tore my ACL, my LCL, my PCL. I broke tibia, fibula, ankle in 7 places.
You pretty much checked all the boxes.
Just femur was all good. Everything else was destroyed. I have perennial nerve damage. So I have this thing called foot drop, which doesn't affect me driving at all, but it affects me in life, I guess, a little bit. So yeah, that process was tough. I was 14, a freshman in high school at the time, and I missed pretty much all that year of school. I got homeschooled. All my friends were at school and playing sports and all that stuff, so it was tough. I missed that kind of, middle teen years of life almost. Going to rehab, 4 days a week, trying to get some strength back, working it all in. And I remember the first time I drove a race car, I was still on crutches. Probably shouldn't have driven the car, but I had this huge brace on. I could use the clutch. That all worked out for me. And yeah, like I had mentioned, all I basically could do was play video games and eat food. And I did a lot of both of those. And I gained a lot of weight. I was in very good shape playing football, and then gained about 100 pounds in that process. Had to then, once I was healthy, figure out how to lose it and get back in shape. Racing helped me with that. I remember one of my first races, I did a 30-minute race, and I was worn out after that. And the car wasn't very fast, let's just say, and I needed to figure it out. So it gave me a lot of motivation and drive to kind of rebuild myself. I thought, I was playing football as hard as I could, and I was going to try to do that. That was my passion. My real passion was racing, but I thought it was like a pipe dream. Like when you're a kid, you want to be an astronaut. Odds are you're not going to be an astronaut, but you aspire and dream to be. For me, that was racing, and that moment in life kind of allowed me the ability to pursue it, I guess.
What's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you while racing a car? Is there something you're like, oh my gosh, Hollywood could not write that type of a storyline?
Man, that's a good question. I don't know. While racing a car, I'm glad this is on tape delay because I'm not sure.
What about you? While he's thinking, what about
You're talking like in the car driving?
Yeah, like you're racing. It's like crazy stuff that's happened where you want to get on the radio and go, you guys are not going to believe what I just saw.
Well, I had a MX5 Cup race at Road America with like 2 laps to go. The fire bottle broke out of the little holder that it's in, and it's rolling around the floorboard. That was maybe, 5 laps to go. Well, by 2 laps to go, it's fully just shooting off inside the car. You can't breathe. You can't see anything. We were running good. Like we're in the top 5, I think. And finishing that race and getting out, and then like them showing up and being like, whoa, what happened? Did you set it off when you got back here? I'm like, no, the last 2 laps, the thing was, foaming, and it was pretty bad. I do remember that I couldn't smell or see anything. That's the first thing that comes to my mind, I guess.
See, what you should say the next time is just, you know what? We're on the cool down lap, and I looked over at the fans, and my leg hit it, and then it went off. And what about you?
A couple of things stick out. I remember I was testing, not technically racing, at VIR, and this pack of deer jumped over the fence and ran across the track. I had to stop in the middle of the back straightaway. That was kind of odd. That happens from time to time, especially I find like in the fall, if you're doing testing, there's random wildlife that shows up. I had a situation at Road America, MX5 Cup, where the brake calipers basically weren't tight. And the caliper had there were 2 pins, one pin had fallen out, and the caliper was laying against the wheel. And, the cars aren't super fast on the straight, so you don't do a whole lot of slowing down there, except in a couple places. So, like, man, the brakes aren't very good. The pedal feels really weird. And I kind of feel this vibration in the front end of the car. So I'm driving around. Eventually I get a flat tire. Well, it turns out the caliper was laid against the wheel as like a lathe and then cut a hole in the wheel. And that actually lost me the championship that year. Ended up losing it by like a few points, and I DNF'd that race because I had 2 flat front tires. So that was a crazy one.
I like I forget what it's called, the shootout at Laguna Seca and MX5 Cup. They did the season-long championship, and then they had this one-off weekend where it was 2 races, its own little points out of both 2 races to win. I think it was $75,000 to first and $50,000 to second. And this might not be the craziest thing, but it's a good story.
It is a good story.
Robbie was busy leading those 42 minutes he talked about earlier.
Yep.
I was in second, and I was driving for MMR at the time, and you were with Hoover.
Yep.
Who I had previously driven for, and so we knew each other well, obviously. And under yellow, I just kept. You could bump draft really well in those cars. So the front was pretty stout, and under yellow, I just kept kind of giving him a couple shots, and he eventually radios in and says, you know, the 28's hitting me.
I said something like, for some reason.
And so Chad McCumbee comes on the radio and he goes, they're saying that you're hitting the whatever number you were. They're saying you're hitting him under yellow. And I was like, yeah, but no.
I
No, that's
don't
just all.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't recall.
So they're like, he's like, well, they're saying that if you do it, you know, you're going to get black flag or drive through. So I gave him one more shot. He gave me a thumbs up. And then we got on with it when it went green again.
Yeah, that was a funny weekend, funny track. We were talking about the draft. That was one of the only tracks, if everything went perfect, you could break away. So I think I qualified on the pole, or we were somewhere in the top 3. I'm leading, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to go and try to check out, not really thinking there'd be a yellow. I wasn't concerned about my tires. And those cars, you could drive pretty hard, and you didn't really degrade the tire that much. So I had a nice lead. Everything was going fine. And then that yellow happened. That stacked us all up. He's beating my back bumper off under yellow for no reason.
Or getting you prepared what was going to
some reason. And then I can't remember exactly what happened, but we restart. I'm leading still, but it's closer. Maybe evidently I had burned up my tires a little bit more than everybody else because I was leading and just driving as hard as I could. And somebody had like a mechanical failure, or there was a lap car, which didn't make sense because we just had a yellow to stack everybody else up, but kind of like checked the field up into the corkscrew. And I remember kind of like just picking the middle of the road in the corkscrew thinking, this will be fine. And then he ships it down the outside of the corkscrew.
You go, get ready. I've heard this 100 times.
He makes the corner sort of enough to turn left. I go down. I'm kind of at the apex, and suddenly there's like this flying Mazda, and we just kind of collide.
I knocked out your toe.
Yeah, pretty bad. The wheel went from dead straight to this and whatever. But it was that was a fun couple races. I love racing those cars at that track because, again, I was a one-car team and I couldn't draft so well. So that was always good fun. That track produced really good racing in those cars. And what could go wrong? A cash prize, $75,000, and a bunch of racers that have no money, or at least in our case, we need the money. So yeah, it was fun.
So think about this, and I'm going to ask him a question about his family heritage. But for both of you, if you had one story, if you were going to write your racing, trilogy of, your career and all that you've experienced, what would be the first 2 stories that you would ever tell anybody? And for you, I'm just going to mention Hatfield and McCoy's, because that is such a century-old plus, story about 2 families and battling, West Virginia, Kentucky. And your mom is what, a McCoy?
Yeah, my grandmother, my mom was raised in Pikeville, Kentucky. My grandmother was originally from there, and she is a first descendant of the McCoy family, which is pretty wild. Growing up, I heard all these stories. We called her Nanny, right? That was her name, and we would always say, like, Nanny tells these stories, but you hear them over and over again.
Like, it can't be true.
Yeah, we're thinking it's like a fishing story, that fish gets a little bigger every time you tell it. And I think I must have been early high school or middle school. The History Channel documentary came out, and it was word for word what she had told us our whole lives.
Wow.
And we knew that they were crazy. My mom's uncles and stuff, they come to visit us all.
So, when you say crazy, how do you define crazy? Like,
they're, bringing moonshine. There's firearms going off. I don't know. I've heard so many stories.
The moonshine's not bad, but when you factor in the firearms, it could get a little bit burned down the backyard type party atmosphere.
There's plenty of stories. I don't know how many of them I can tell here, but yeah, they're a wild bunch, and they're all good people. And I think, honestly, I learned a lot from and I didn't know this at the time, but the way my mom grew up, she grew up without running water and electricity, so she's a tough lady. And I learned a lot from her on how to approach life and go for things, and what she's done with her life. And my grandma, she had 5 daughters, and women were second class citizens down in the hills, as she would say, and she had 5 daughters, so she got them out of there, moved them to Ohio. And then that's obviously where I grew up. But being raised in a family of people that went through that, you learn a lot, and you get a lot of appreciation for hard work, and kind of in a different way, like anything's possible. And yeah, my mom's super tough, and she worked 2 jobs so that she'd buy tires and whatnot growing up. So there's a lot of lessons to be had in there, and there are some good family stories that come out of it.
Well, it's like he and I were talking at dinner one night that my mom went to a one-room schoolhouse until the 8th grade. And that whole generation, the hard work, the work ethic, what they would do as far as just trying to get to the next week, the next month, the next year, and that really instills something in you. And, just talking about, what women went through. When my mom first started in racing in 1968 at Michigan International Speedway, women were not allowed in the garage. It took about 4 or 5 years for that to happen, and people are like, "What?"
That's wild.
That's exactly how it was at that time.
Crazy.
And then you look at the IMSA WeatherTech paddock now, and you've got, half of the pit lane officials are female. You go up and down the boxes, engineers, AO has a tire changer. I mean, women are featured predominantly. It's so inclusive, what you see at the IMSA weekends. And there's a place for everybody. And so that's another reason why I think it's such a special series. But looking at if we ever had the Robby Foley book, what would be 1 or 2 stories that you for sure would want to throw in?
Yeah, that's tough. I think, like I mentioned earlier, that Watkins Glen MX5 Cup situation, I just won the scholarship, trying to win the championship. The championship had a big prize, doing well in the championship, but it's raining at Watkins Glen, like crazy rain. I was leading the race, and again, in those cars, it's all about draft. I kind of could check out a little bit in the wet. We kind of set the car up for the rain. It was all going really well. And it started to dry out a little bit, and the pack was kind of catching me a bit. They were drafting up to me. It was always quicker to run in the pack. And I was pushing hard, probably a little bit too hard. I didn't feel like it at the time, but I caught a wet painted line coming out of turn 10 and just got the right rear on it enough to like lose the car. Kind of saved it, got it straight eventually, but by the time I saved it, I just caught that grass that I think is still there before the turn 11 apex wall. I just bumped that wall and I spun around, and I was kind of okay. It didn't hit the wall hard, and I spun in the middle of the track, and I was just sitting there, and the whole field's coming, and I'm like, oh boy, this isn't going to be good. But there was space on both sides. Unfortunately, the guy in second hit me, destroyed the car. I think I finished the race, kind of, but anyway, needed to go to the body shop. The car was pretty torn up, and we raced in a couple weeks, and I can remember there was some credit card balancing going on, maybe taking another credit card out or finding, I grew up in a middle-class family. I never really wanted for anything, but I could never afford to really race. I couldn't really afford to do what I was doing. So there was definitely some, and my parents would kind of hide it a little bit and didn't want to make me feel bad about it. But at the same time, I was aware, and there was a little bit of finagling to figure out how to make it all work, with some credit cards, some mortgages, and, finding some cash to pay for this. And I remember at the time, the scholarship was great, but it was the first year of the new car. So there was a lot of added expenses, unforeseen added expenses. So the scholarship didn't cover all of the racing. So I think the deal was I had to come up with $3,000 or $4,000 a race weekend to be able to make the race. The prize money at the time was really good in MX5 Cup. I still have that card. Remember that card?
Oh yeah.
They would put your money
$500 a day, and
yeah.
So you'd win prize money. And what would you get for win? Like $6,000 or $7,000?
Could, yeah. And I lost a lot of money in ATM fees at least, but you would take, it was kind of a weird system. You'd take the cash out of the ATM anyway. So if you did well, I could pay for the next weekend, but I was working, I was coaching a lot of the times I should have been in class, but trying to make it all work. And that would go in like the chapter where I thought, okay, this is it or not. I had a few of those races, one being Road Atlanta 2015. I had to win this championship or I was basically done. That was before I got the scholarship. And in terms of wild, weird stories that I would throw in there, I remember being like 16 or 17.
He's already starting this out with the dramatic, I remember.
Yeah, this is somehow going to be bad for me, I think.
No. I was 16 or 17. I had just raced at Sebring for the first time. We were the Sebring 12-hour support race. And one of my buddies from the racing series at the time was like, let's go down and watch night practice from like turn 7. So I remember being a young kid. I'm kind of sheltered at the time for sure. Walking through Green Park at Sebring, seeing all the parties and whatever as a young kid on I guess it would have been a Thursday night. It was probably night practice.
It's an eye-opener.
It was eye-opening, that's for sure. We got to ride. Skip Barber had a shop there, and they had a deuce and a half kind of in the shop back in the day, and we rode through that whole thing, and it was cool. That was one of the biggest eye-opening experiences I've had in racing, so that was cool. But yeah, there's tons, and Will Turner says all the time he's going to write a book, and I could write a book, and I'm much younger. So racing, as you know, gives the best stories, and you end up meeting the best people at random different times in life.
What's your one story you'd put in your book?
Yeah, I think that 2012 runoffs, basically, my parents couldn't support any more than that, and it was kind of going to be over. I ended up winning that race kind of in dramatic fashion, getting invited to the scholarship shootout for Mazda. And there's a couple steps you had to go through. So, there's 4 boxes you got to check along the way. But I don't know. I can't remember if anybody knew this at the time other than basically my parents and me. But essentially, if I didn't win that, I was probably going to be done. And that was right about the time I was going to college. So probably life would have looked a lot different. That was a big turning point. And luckily, even to get to that race, my parents were out of money to get me to that runoffs. And my uncle Pat, who I'm named after, kind of had some connections and found a sponsor to pay for that weekend. So I really was confident that this might be it. I had to win that, then I had to go win the shootout, then I had to get a ride and to do all this stuff. So that was probably the biggest, linchpin of, is this going to work or is it not? So that would definitely be in there. And then I think there would be some good stories. Robby and I, Monticello Motor Club, we were both driving for Hoover Speed at the time, and they were based at Road Atlanta. We worked on a Friday.
Oh, this is a good one. Can't believe I forgot this.
We worked on a Friday. We get done at 5. We jump in his dad's Volkswagen. He still has it.
Yeah. Interestingly, he just bought a new car to replace it, but this thing's...
Now, is this a Volkswagen Beetle or is this a Rabbit,
it's like
GTI?
Golf wagon.
Golf sport wagon thing.
Yeah. We jump in the car. We drive, because we couldn't afford the plane tickets. That was the deal, right?
Plus the time. We probably could have got the plane ticket, but
we couldn't get a plane ticket and miss work.
Right.
Yeah. We needed to work and we needed to be there the next morning. So we get done with work. We drive from Monticello, New York to Road Atlanta. We test on, I think the driver's meeting was at 7 a.m. We got there at like
6:48.
Yeah. We test on Saturday. We test on Sunday. Then we get in the car, drive back to Monticello, New York. We went to the house with the air mattresses in the basement. We were there for all of 10 minutes. We both took a shower, put on our red shirts, and went to work.
It was a corporate event, I can't remember.
Yeah, I remember. We were doing lead follow. We had the windows down, the music going. They were dropping Red Bulls and coffees in the car every 10 minutes. And they're like, what did you guys do this weekend? We're like, we actually just drove to Road Atlanta and back for a 2-day test. And they're like, how? You just were here, Friday. And it was wild. I remember on the way back, I won't get us into too much trouble here, but we were switching off drivers often, and one of us would be sleeping in the back seat. We're so tired, wake the other guy up, and then pull off the road to switch, and it got down to like every 45 minutes, nobody's on the road. We're just stopping on the exit ramp and switching drivers. It was an interesting Interesting trip home. Robby got a speeding ticket, I remember.
I did. Leaving the track on Highway 53, make a left. We stayed at the Best Western, I can remember.
Yep.
And I was so tired. It was the first day of the test. I was just driving. I was kind of following traffic. And it goes from like 2 lanes on each side down to 1 and goes from like, I don't know, 55 to 45 or 35.
It's always an explanation. You could just say you're going like 15 over.
Yeah.
I mean, statute of limitations are
Right.
over. I mean, we're
Plus,
He's got to tell you.
I genuinely had no idea how fast I was going. I was just tired and I was driving.
Yeah.
And I think I was doing 72 and like a 45 or something. And
Yeah.
I got
that's the engineer mind. He's got to have the
Yeah.
exact number.
It went from a 2 lane to a 1 lane.
But I'm with him though because I do the same thing. So I'm
Yeah.
drafting with you.
And then I guess when you get pulled over and you race cars, it's always hit or miss whether you want to say it or not. And officer asked me where I was coming from, whatever, and he rightly gave me a ticket. The racing thing didn't work out. He wasn't very impressed. But I can remember explaining that to my dad, and his car was interesting. He still has this thing. I've put a ton of miles on it myself. I used to take it. Got great gas mileage. I've taken that thing across the country. So is he. And he just bought, actually, an M240i BMW to replace it. So that thing's seen a lot of miles. But we've had some good stories doing road trips. I can remember same kind of thing. We raced at Road America, MX5 Cup. I think he won, and I won the Skip Barber race. And then we had to rip back to Monticello to make it to work. A lot of those crazy stories where you're living out of a suitcase, going from A to B, and when there's no flight at 8 p.m., to leave Wisconsin to get back to New York for 6, what do? You drive. You got to do it. I did it a lot solo too. I can remember leaving Auburn, driving down to Sebring through the night. That was that Skip Barber story. I worked a school, probably not my best day of work, but I left class. I had like an evening calculus class. I left that, got in the car, ripped down, slept like 3 hours at a rest stop, made it. So yeah, a lot of those stories.
Yeah.
Now, if it makes you feel any better, in 1970 at Darlington in practice, Richard Petty wrecked his primary car. And so he had to go back to level cross to get the backup. Benny Parsons was driving home and went through a speed zone and got pulled over.
No,
and the cop says, "Hey, why were you speeding?" "I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to believe this, but Richard Petty, the king, he crashed during practice at Darlington. Unbelievable." And the police officer goes, "Yes, I know." He goes, "Really? How do you know?" He goes, "I gave him a ticket 30 minutes ago as he was passing through." So behind the wheel, when you turned 16, what was your very first passenger car when you got your license?
I had a pickup truck, Chevy 1500, 1995. It was blue, and it was not fast. But, the winters in Ohio, a lot of people put sandbags in the back to get traction. I did not. It would get sideways, but you were never going fast when it did.
So he just worked on car control.
Yeah.
Yeah. My family had 3 cars at the time. One was like a Super Duty pickup truck to tow the racing trailer sometimes. My dad had an Acura TSX. I drove that thing around, and then we had a Subaru BRZ as well. So I spent most of my time in that, and he and I
Done some trips.
or I put 120,000 miles on in like 3 or 4 years. But not the most comfortable road trip car, but made it work.
And nothing beats a road trip story. And we appreciate you guys swinging on by the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast studio, making a house call, road trip, so to speak, and laying out some really cool stories. And, we're going to have you guys back for chapter 2.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for having us. Looking forward to racing VIR this week. Our Turner Motorsport, Bellhaven Investment, Liquid Molly car is going to be fast.
Well, I will say this, the Will Turner Motorsports gang, the Taco Mafia, you can see why they like to follow these guys. And we appreciate you spending your time with us right here on the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. For the entire team, I'm Matt Yocum. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you at the track.